Good morning, everybody. It's Shelley again, and today I'm really looking forward to doing our winter scene cards. So these don't have to be cards. They could actually be like little finished paintings that you could use as a hostess gift, or if you just wanted to do a stocking stuffer for somebody, or just do something a little bit nice for somebody. So let's jump in and we'll take a look. I actually had the wrong screen open there. Good morning. All right, so let's jump into these cards. So these cards, I had a lot of fun with these, and I wanted to show you these, and I also wanted to show you the in the reference pictures that I used. They're my own, and I wanted to use those to as my inspiration for creating these cards. So as you can see, this was my inspiration for this one. It's a little different, of course, but I wanted the idea of it, and that's all I was really after there. So I did another birch tree one here. There's another birch tree one, and then you can do endless variations on that theme, like that. That is this one here. You know, that sort of idea. And you can see I didn't try to do it exactly the same. Now this one, this was the inspiration for this one. This is looking directly into the sun, whereas these ones, the sun is coming from the left-hand side. So this one we're looking directly into the sun. So this is going to be a fun effect to try and create. And there's another one showing that same sort of idea. This one I tried to make it a little bit more sunset looking. So these are quicker and easier than they probably look. So let's jump in here. I'm going to move these out of the way so I don't get any paint on them. Oh, I found some more. So you see, I can just do a whole lot of them all kind of at the same time. And I'm going to be working on arches, 140-pound cold pressed paper, and it's basically a quarter sheet. And what I did was I stretched it, I taped the edges. Only I taped as little as possible because I wanted this space here to be 5 by 7. It depends on the size of the card that you're working on, but yeah, I'm looking for 5 by 7, so I wanted to make sure that when I tape it off, I've measured this beforehand. But you know, if you have a 5 by 7 card, this could be trimmed down to 4 by 6, and it would fit very nicely with a little white border from the card. I really want to emphasize that I'm using cold pressed paper and that I'm using 100% cotton paper. I think some of the effects that I'm going to create today would be very difficult to recreate with paper that isn't cotton, because it's not as absorbent. So let's talk about the other materials we're going to be using. I'm going to be using some tape. Now I've put this onto a cutting board because I'm going to cut it. And I'm going to be using a couple of brushes. I've got a flat, a round, a larger round, and a liner brush. You know, so I might want to use a combination of these. I'm going to need a little knife to cut my tape. And most of my paint that I'm going to be using is going to be DaVinci watercolors, and I'm going to be using Cobalt blue, maybe some Cerulean as well, Paynes gray, permanent rose, burnt sienna, raw sienna, and Aureolin. So that's what I'm going to be using here, and we're going to make this as efficient as possible. Oh, one more thing. These are little removable stickers that you can buy either at you know, I got mine at the dollar store, but you can see they're little stickers, and I'm going to be using those for my son. Very easy to use. Please make sure that you're using the removable kind. Very important. I got mine at the dollar store, but most office supply places like Staples and Office Depot and places like that will carry it. All right, so I'm going to start off with the birch trees. So in order to save my area for my birch tree, instead of pulling out my masking fluid and all of that kind of stuff, I'm just going to use my masking tape to create my birch trees. So let's do a birch tree. Now I don't obviously want them straight like this, like a telephone pole. So I want to create a shape. Maybe we'll do a curve there, and I'll pull that off. And we'll do another line sort of parallel to that. All right, let's, I don't want to make the bottom straight across either because, again, it kind of looks a little bit like a telephone pole. Let's make it a little bit of a curve there too, right? It'll look like kind of snow. All right, so let's have one a little straighter. You can see that, you know, this method, let's do that the same angle here. This method would be very, very fast to saving your trees. A lot faster than pulling out the masking fluid. And you could really just cut a whole lot of these, paint a whole lot of cards all at the same time. So I'm going to do one narrow tree. Make him a little bit longer. Okay, so there's my 3 birch trees right here. I often will paint like several of these at the same time, but I'm going to just do one today, so it'll be faster. And I'm going to do a vertical. So I'm just going to take my tape and place my trees wherever I want them. Let's put one here. Let's do this one here. That one sticks down a little bit more. And we'll do one here. Right, almost touching, not quite. Okay, so there's my birch trees. Saved, ready to paint. Make sure it's pressed down well. And one of the reasons I say to use the Arches paper or the 140-pound cold press 100% cotton paper, and especially Arches, it's very durable, so there's no real worries about tearing the paper when you pull this tape off. But any of the things that I show you today with anything that you're adhering to your paper, make sure your paper's like test it out on whatever paper you're using. Like, don't do a whole page of cards without testing that out. Test it out on your paper first. Because I'm working on Arches, but I don't know what your paper is going to do. So let's go back to my inspiration photos here. Oh, I set them to the side here. Okay. So this is similar to what we're going to be doing. Now, as you can see from my sample right here, I took a little time and I softened edges and all of that kind of stuff. And you can do that. You can do that. That's no problem. It will slow you down, but you can do that. But it will look very nice even without that. So let's start off here. I am going to create the like there's several mounds in the snow, right? Like there's like hills or maybe fallen trees and things like that. So I'm going to start off with my cobalt blue. Now, cobalt blue by itself is really, really blue, so I'm going to put a little permanent rose in that. Actually, I'm going to put a little permanent rose to the side. You see how I'm doing it kind of off to the side there? The reason I like to do it off to the side is so that I get variations in my snow, that it's not all just, you know, one mix and it just looks purple. That I can, every time I pick up a brush load, I can pick up more from here or I can pick up more from here. So let's determine where the background is. No drawing involved here. That's one of the other things that's going to make this really quick. And so I can just come in and I can start putting in all of these lines for the snow. And the thing about the lines in the snow is they don't have to start at the left and go all the way to the right. You could start here and go across. And they can go thick and thin. That's the wonderful thing about winter and the terrain, and when the snow blankets the over top the ground and everything, you get all these variations. So I don't want just stripes. Let's do some big areas. Let's do a great big section here. All right, so that looks like it's more of a mound. I can make that a little darker at the bottom maybe. And we'll go a couple of little lines, thick, thin, thick again. Mix it up, like get lots of variations in there. Let's put some small ones in. And I can even join some of them. They can certainly touch. Let's touch a couple of these. And I'm going to do a couple just through here. Now, as we come forward, things are getting a lot closer to us. The mound of snow here is way larger, much thicker. Look how thick that is compared to what's back in here. They're just slivers back in there. So as we come forward, we can get larger and larger and larger. So these spaces that I'm putting in are going to be a lot wider. Let's put this birch tree trio in a big drift there. There looks like there's something fallen under the snow and it's making a big drift. So putting that in there, go right down to the bottom of the trees, and let's put in a few more lines. Mixing it up so I have variations. And one thing I really like about using the combination of cobalt blue and the permanent rose is they separate a little bit as on the paper. And when that happens, you get these wonderful variations within your snow. All right, so in the foreground, as I said, we need big shapes in the foreground. Doesn't matter if you get these broken edges. Actually, that's quite lovely. I'm going to do more of that. I like that. Let's do a little of that here. Running out of color though. I want to do a couple of little lines in the snow from things are growing out of the snow. So that's it. You just put your tape down, put a bunch of lines across, make sure they get bigger the closer they come towards you. And I just want to make a couple of them a little bit darker just so I have a little more variation, and that's good. that's my snow-covered foreground. Very quick, quite straightforward to paint. Now let's talk about this background here. This background in the background is quite dark. It goes into the woods. My palette is not ceramic. That is a question on the chat. If you do have a question for me on the chat, it is a good idea to put it in capitals. I can spot it right away. And to everyone else, very good morning. It's sunny here, very nice actually. Don't know what the temperature is, but it looks nice out. And so I'm going to get my background in here. Now this background, I'm just going to go into some Paynes gray. That's a little bit too gray. So I'm going to warm it up with some burnt sienna. Burnt sienna and Paynes gray will give me kind of a brown color. All right, so for here, I'm just filling that in. Doesn't even have to be particularly tidy. Just fill it in. Got a little darker over there, and that's fine. All right, so now we have our foreground, our background. Let's let that dry. I'll actually speed it up with my dryer. I actually have more than 2 palettes. I have like multiple palettes, but this is my go-to. This is the one I use 99.9% of the time. It's just wiping off some of that excess droplets. I don't want that to get onto my card. Okay, so that's good enough. Now, I'm going to take out my small round. Same color, maybe a little darker. Maybe I'll put a little less water into it, but I'll make the same mix. Trying to brown up that Paynes gray a little bit, so just blotted my brush there just so it's not overloaded. And I'm going to start putting in a lot of trees. Now, these can be every which way. You don't have to be particularly fussy about it. You just need to kind of make some noise back there with your brush strokes. If you want it to look like a really busy forest, you can put some diagonal lines in as well. Just make it look like it's a little more dense. I mean, it is dark back there, so you want it to look like there's enough trees. Right? Okay, so that's the background. Now I'm going to start bringing it forward. So as I come forward, what I want to do is where I started some of these strokes, sort of in the middle, I'm going to put a tree there. So as they get closer, they're going to get bigger. So I'm going to put larger tree trunks right here at the end of that stroke. Can I put it other places? Of course I can. Let's put one here. And all of a sudden the forest is coming further forward. I'm trying to make these not too straight. I'm also trying to make my color dark enough that I don't have see-through trees. If it's not dark enough, hit it again. Put a little more color in there. And there might be a few grasses and things. And you can go ahead and put those in burnt sienna or even raw sienna if you want to, rather than using the dark color for the trees back there. This one looks a little transparent, so we'll put that one in a little darker. And the nice thing, the other quick thing about doing it this way is we're not painting the whole tree. We're painting the tree trunk. Should we use low heat over the tape? I'm actually using a heat gun, and I keep it moving. I don't hold it in one spot. But no, it shouldn't hurt the tape as long as I keep that gun moving. And maybe I'll do a little sapling or something here. And that's about as close to having a tree with branches as I'm going to get. Right? That's it. That's just my little sapling there. Okay, so my background is basically done. If you want to add in a few more little grasses and things like that, feel free. It's up to you. You're painting, you get to do whatever you want. So let's take off the tape and see what we have. I could almost use those again, couldn't I? Except they're all sticking to each other, so I won't. But if you took them off carefully, I suppose you could do that. All right, I want to make sure this is dry so I don't put my hand in wet paint. So you could do this vertical, you could do this horizontal, whatever you want to do. So I'm going to go back to my little bit larger round brush here, and I'm going to get some raw sienna ready. I've got my blue from my snow. I'll use some of that, but I'll darken some of that as well. So I've got raw sienna, cobalt blue, into which, if you wanted to put a little bit of that permanent rose, you could, but you could just use cobalt blue too, and a little bit of Paynes gray. So the first thing we want to do is make the tree look round. So I'll start with the one. Let's start with the one in front. So we'll do this one here on the left. Because I'm right-handed, it makes more sense for me to start on the left. I actually remembered today. So I'm wetting the tree. Okay, I just put a streak down. I'm not going to wet all of the trees. I'm going to do one tree at a time. What color would I use for the snow shadow in a sunset? You could use more purples, or you could even bring a little bit of the sunset color in there. You could introduce some sunset colors into that snow as well. All right, so we can get a little bit more into that with our next little one, but I'm going to take my raw sienna, and I'm not going to start right at the left edge. Let me zoom in a little bit on this for you. Okay, so close to, but not touching the left edge, I'm going to put raw sienna down the left side. Right? I'm leaving a little sliver of white. You can see that. Beside that, I'm going to put some blue. And this can go to the other side. Okay. That helps to make the tree look round, but it doesn't look round enough yet. It also doesn't look very sunny yet because we need some dark in there. So that's where the Paynes gray comes in. And I don't want to have too much in my brush. Let's blot that. This is a pretty skinny tree. So I'm going to come a little bit close to the right side, but not touching. And I'm going to come down. Now, as I come down, you can see I didn't just draw one line. Did you notice that? I wanted to make sure that I get these little sort of variations within the tree. So that gave me one tree. Let's go on to the next one. Clean water. Now let's draw this line so I don't accidentally forget. I want to draw that line because this tree's in front, because the bottom comes closer to us. That means it's in front. So I'm going to wet this tree. Just clean water there, and go into my raw sienna, and close to my left edge, but not at the edge, I'm going to bring my raw sienna. So this gives us a little warm for the sun, for the half of the tree that's in the sun, it's getting some warmth. Then we put the cool, the shadow color, on the opposite side. So I'm getting the cobalt blue down here on the right hand side, sort of the right half of the tree. It can overlap the raw sienna. It won't turn green because raw sienna is not that yellow. It's in the yellow family, but it's not so yellow that that's going to turn green, so don't worry about that. And you might be feeling, oh gosh, that's awfully dark for a birch tree. But hold on, because we still have the darks to put on. You'll be surprised. Then, still wet, but my brush not very wet. I'm going to come in with some Paynes gray, sort of maybe a third of the way in from the right-hand side, and I'm going to come in and drop that in while things are still wet. You can even dot a few places in there if you want to. This tree's big enough. That the little one was kind of hard, but you can put a few little spots in there like that, and that's interesting. Now I can't do this tree because this one's still wet, so I'll dry this one. If you were doing multiple cards, you could do your second tree on your next card. By the time you got back to this one, it would be dry enough. But let's give this a dry. You can get as creative as you want with this. For example, what if you wanted this to look like sort of the first snowfall of the season? You could put autumn colors back in there. You could put this back there in blue and it could look like a fresh snowfall because it would look like the trees have frost or snow on them. You could do those trees in the background in blue. The ones in the foreground you'd still have to do dark, but in the background there you could incorporate some blue. I like the contrast between this warm brownish color and the snow, and the warmth of the the birch tree and the snow. So that you've got this warm, cool thing going on. Could you use Paynes Gray instead? Yes, you could. You probably have to use a little bit heavier, like Paynes Gray. As you can see, it's pretty staining. It's pretty strong. But clean water now, and I'm going to do my final tree. Hopefully that's cool enough. Don't want my water evaporating as soon as I hit the paper. Okay, I'm going to go into my raw sienna, close to but not touching the edge. Then my cobalt. Not putting your shadow right at the edge is going to be very helpful in not making it look flat. If you put your shadows right at the edge, it doesn't make it appear as round as putting it on, like putting it in from the edges, because there's always a bit of that reflected light. So a little more Paynes Gray, which I will blot. Probably have that a little bit stronger than the other ones. Let's the beautiful part of this is it doesn't have to be neat and tidy. This will look completely natural if it's not so polished looking. I almost feel like I could use more on this one, but it's dry now, so I could wet it and add some more if I wanted it a deep, darker shadow there. If I'm getting a little bit of a dry edge there, so I'm just going to run this down. Just a blotted brush there, and I think I will darken this one. So I'm just going to come in and re-wet this, and I'm going to put in a little more Paynes Gray there. But I have to wet the whole tree to do that. So a little more Paynes Gray. There, that feels better. Those trees now feel like they're quite round. Oh, thank you, Janet. Janet says, give Shelley a thumbs up. Some of you might have to X out of chat to get into the like button. Yes, I appreciate all the thumbs up, even if they're dirty thumbs like mine. There is, you know, so I'm getting a lot of questions lately about, do I have a Patreon account? And I do not. I do not have a Patreon account, but what I do have is on my YouTube channel here, there's something called Super Thanks. If you wish to support my channel, that is not a request, it's just if you wish to, then there is something called Super Thanks, and basically you can make a donation towards my channel so that I can make more videos like this. All right, so I have 3 of my birch trees now. And I want to dry that before I put on any of my markings on my tree. This is a great size to work because you can work almost production line if you have a multitude of this type of thing to do. And they don't all have to be identical. They could all be a little bit different. You can move the birch trees to the left. You could have some in the foreground. You could have a couple more a little further back. Whatever you want to do. And as I said, you can even sort of change up the seasons and change the background in the distance there. All right, so I'm just going to now take my small round, and I'm going to pick up my Paynes gray. Let's pick up this brownish one that I had used in my background. And I'm blotting it because, I better let that cool a bit. My paper is actually hot. But I'm going to be using the side of the brush to paint with, not the tip. So see how I'm holding my brush? Like I'm holding it so that it's very close to the paper. And I'm going to drag it from the right side of the tree in, or the left side of the tree in. Blot a little more off. And don't make them all evenly spaced. That is so easy to do, and you really have to make a conscious effort to not do that. So I'm going to leave a gap. See, I left a big gap there. Now I'm going to do another sort of cluster. Also, make sure you're making some large ones and a combination of small ones as well. If you make them all the same, it will look very man-made. It won't look like a natural tree. It'll look very contrived. And the more of this you do, the faster you'll get at it, especially if you're doing several of them. Right, let's go here. Now these ones are bigger, so I've got a little more space to work in. But these trees, we don't even need to worry about branches and things like that. It's very quick to do this, but the effect is really good. Like it really feels like that sun is coming across the snow there. And it won't take you very long at all. But I especially love this texture on the birch tree. That's one of my favorite things. But before you put any of this texture on, please, please, please make the shape of your tree first. If you want your tree to look round. If you don't want your tree to look round, then that's fine. Don't listen to me. But I like to make my trees look round. I also like them to look like they're being hit by the sun. There's that warm color that the sun creates, and that's going to end up on your otherwise white birch tree. Take a look next time you're looking at a birch tree. It's not as white as you think. Sometimes in the middle of the day, and when you have a lot of snow and it's the middle of the day and the shadows aren't long like this, but that's right above, it won't feel as warm. But later in the day, you're definitely going to see some of this warmth on the side of the tree. Oh, that's very generous, Helen. Thank you so much. I do appreciate that. All right, so first little card is done. Right, that was 45 minutes. A little longer than I normally would have taken, especially if I was working production line. But 45 minutes is pretty good for a painting, you have to admit. So we'll go on to the next one. And I think what I'll do is I'll just flip this around because that'll be a lot easier. And I'll work on this side. Now this next one that I'm going to do, and maybe I'll just do two at a time, just to show you that you can do this quite easily and still end up with two different paintings. So let's take a pencil and determine our horizon line. So let's go maybe a third of the way down, and we'll go, okay, that's my horizon line. Let's take a sticker and determine where our sun's going to be. Let's put my sun here, and got something on my paper. Here. We'll put the sun low here. Okay? I really do need to wipe off my hand, my thumb. I will never win any hand model competitions. All right, so first things first, I am going to use a large round. Actually, I'm going to use an even larger round than that. I'm going to use this giant one, okay? Size of my thumb, size of my blue thumb. And I need a very big puddle of my snow color, okay? Same snow color I used previously, but if you want to make it more purple or more blue, or like I said, more sunset colors, for example, feel free to do that. So let's look at my painted example again for just one moment. Oh, I just spotted something on my other painting that I'd like to backtrack on here before I apply snow here. Let me just go back to this one for 1 second. On my other painting, I did my shadows pretty dark on this one, but on this painting, you see I've got these little sort of clumps of snow. Those little clumps of snow are very easy to do. I'll take some of my blue color here, and you're going to do like sort of half of the clump of snow, and then it has a shadow, so that comes out from there. Then I'm going to soften inside on the snow, and that's a clump of snow. That's as easy as that is. So if you want to make little clumps of snow on your snow, that's how you would do that. Little crescent, like part of a crescent on the right hand side, and then the cast shadow. Oh my goodness, you guys are so generous. Thank you so much. Thanks, David. Thank you, Janet. And that's all I wanted to say about that other one, and we're going to take a look at this one. Now, I really love how this this separated a little bit here. I picked up a little bit more of the permanent rose in here. I even got some blossoms, and it doesn't matter. Like, you step back and it looks perfectly fine. So what I'm going to do on this one is, and I'm doing 2 at a time. And the reason I wanted to put my stickers down is because I want to determine where the light source is before I start painting the snow, because I'm going to have shadows on the snow. In the previous one, all the shadows went from left to right. These ones are going to radiate from the sun. Okay, but first we have to put the shape of the snow in. So I'm going to take my cobalt blue. I'm going to make a big puddle here because I've got a fairly big space that I need to work in. Little permanent rose off to the side. Right, so if I have a little bit, if I keep switching back and forth, I'll get variations. And what's in the distance is going to have, it's going to be very skinny, right? It's smaller, skinnier. And as I come forward, it's going to get larger. You can see the shadow shapes in the background are quite skinny and stretched out. Here they get much fatter. There's also some lights and some darks. So I'm going to come in here and get a little bit of a mix, so it's a little bit purpley, and I am filling up this brush. Let's not get it too dark. I'm going to thin it a little bit so we get that sunsetty feel. Now I drew this line in. I did it darker so that you could see it. I'm not actually going to start at the line. I'm going to start just a little bit underneath the line. And let's go fat. So I'm pressing a little bit on my brush if I want a fat area. And then I get right up on the tiptoe if I want to stretch it out. And then I'm going to let's just keep going across these two pictures. All right, so I've got this. Now let's just keep this going here. And before I get too far, I want to start thinking about my shadows. There's probably going to be some trees. So if the sun is here, I'm going to come from the sun and it's going to go something like that. Over here, it'll go the other way. And I'm just going to let those run together. Maybe one here. And you can see that I'm making these lines that look like they're radiating from the sun, almost like sunbeams. Okay? From this sun, right? This is a separate picture. So from this sun here, let's put a dot there. I'm going to make my shadows come on a real angle. And like sunbeams, they're going to radiate. Now I wanted to do this before my paint dries because I don't want to have sort of lines that look like they're on top of other lines, dried lines, right? So I don't want any of this to dry before I put those in. So now let's make some more lines here. Connect some of those shadows. Add some more in if you want to. And those little slivers of light, it's just going to look like little mounds in the snow where the sun is hitting. Let's make this a little darker right here. The big areas tend to get a little darker because, you know, the larger the section, the more deep the valley would be. And if you get any of these broken lines, let me show you what I mean by broken lines. If you get these kind of broken lines, that's fine. Let those happen. Those are perfectly fine to have. And once again, just like all the other things in nature, we don't want to make them all evenly spaced. That's that real man-made effect that we all tend to lean towards accidentally. Let's make a fat one. We'll put a fat tree right there somewhere. All right. So these are shadows from trees that don't exist yet. And this makes it really easy. So I'm just making like sort of big waves, if you will. These are almost like big waves. There, we'll fill a lot of that one in. That'll have a lot of blue. All right, so we'll put a big one. We'll put some smaller ones. But the idea here is I'm trying to connect all of those things so that these lines don't look like they were added on top of dry. That's why I've really filled up my brush, and I'm working pretty quickly here. Yeah, and I did put a number of, like I did list the supplies I'm using under the video description. So when you chatters are finished watching the chat, you can go back to the video and see the description underneath, and it has that. All right, so I'm going to wipe this extra paint off of my tape here because there's like puddles of blue on my tape. There is just one thing I want to do here, and that is make sure I get to the corners. Only so that, because it'll square off my corners nicely. All right, so I'm going to wipe my tape. If you get a blossom, do not go back to fix it. Just leave it alone. It'll be fine. It will not spoil the effect. Okay? Unless it's a really severe blossom, it will look fine. Okay, so we don't really have to wait for that to dry because this is probably dry enough at the top, but just to be sure, I'm going to quickly dry at least the top part, but I think I'll dry all of it because I'm notorious for putting my hand in wet paint, as you can see. You can see a little bit, maybe not on camera so much, but you can see a little of the color separation here between the blue and the permanent rose. Got a little speck in there, but I'll just wipe that off when it's dry. Now we're looking towards the sun, like the sun is actually in our picture, so that becomes sort of our 1-point perspective kind of thing. So we have, you know, the rays of the sun, the shadows of the sun are going to radiate from that one spot. So now it's time to do our sky. So I'm going to take a flat brush here and I'm going to wet the sky, and yes, the sticker will be fine. I'll do one sky at a time because maybe I'll do a little bit of difference between the two skies. I'm just going to do this one, the one on the left, and I'll make it more of a sunset, and then maybe, no, I'll make this one without the sunset. We'll do that. We'll just make this the sun in the sky, as if we're kind of looking up a hill towards the sun and it's like mid-afternoon. Okay, so that's pretty wet. I don't know if you can see the shine on there. It's pretty wet. I might have a little bit of a puddle, so I'm just going to wipe some of that off. Spread it around evenly. And I'm going to take, this is where I'll take maybe a little bit of cerulean blue, mix sort of half cerulean, half cobalt. And I'm going to start painting in my sky. But I'm kind of going around the sticker. Now, what was the point in the sticker if I'm going to go around it? Fear not, when it's this wet, some of that color is going to reach the sticker. There's the way that paint travels on a wet surface, there's no way that that paint is not going to reach that sticker if I'm just leaving a little margin of white around it. But by not going right up to the sticker, I won't have a super crisp sun, which is what I really don't want. I don't want a really hard, crisp sun. It tends to look more like a moon if you do that. And you could do this. You could do a dark sky and make this like a moonlight if you wanted to. But I'm going to go around this and just lift a little bit of that white back. All right. Now, if the shadows are that blue, there's a good chance that the sky's pretty blue, so I want to make sure I put enough color in here. And I'll come right down to the horizon, or the bottom of the snow. I wouldn't exactly call this the horizon because it kind of feels like we're looking up at the sun. And I'm going to take a small round, and in the background, I'm going to take a little bit of burnt sienna. This is burnt sienna. Fairly wet, not really thin, but fairly wet. And you can see I can just drop in some nice warm colors there. Making an effort to not space them evenly and to make them different sizes. I'm consciously trying to do that. Quickly, before any of that starts to dry, I'm going to come into my Paynes gray and do the same thing. Only instead of putting it on top of the burnt sienna, I'll put it sort of between. Keeping the top of the snow dry. And I'm just letting that sort of melt into that wet sky there. Dabble, dabble, dabble. I'm not making it too fussy. If you make it too dry, it won't spread the way you want it to. So you want it to spread a fair bit. Try, touch the paper to find out what it's going to do, and then you'll know sort of, okay, I think we're all right. I don't think it's going to go too far, and you're free to carry on. But I like to test it first. But I really want to use this dark to clean up the top edge of that snow, to really make it look like it is nice and clean along the top of the snow there, as of course it would be. A little extra dark along the bottom. All right, so that has to dry, so I'm going to come over to this one and work this sunny sky. And I'm going to make this one look a little bit more like a sunset. So I'm going to use a little bit more warm color, and around the sun I'm going to put a little bit of a ring of color. So with my flat brush again, I'm going to wet my sky. Small brush, yellow. So I'm going to use I can use an Aureolin. If you have a different yellow, that's fine. Just thin. You don't want to put a lot on here. You don't want to make it really, really bright. Pretty thin. And I'm going to make a little bit of a ring around the sun. Then I'm going to go into my permanent rose here. Because of course, if I had that yellow on there and then I put the blue sky on there, you know you're going to get a green ring around your sun. So we need a transitional color. Plus the sun does radiate kind of a warm color. So I'm going to go around this with some of that permanent rose. A little larger than the sticker. You can see the sticker, then a ring of yellow, then a ring of red. Now let's make my sky color here. Actually, maybe I'll do a little bit more red. I might do a little bit more red if I really want to make this look sunsetty. I'm going to do a little bit more, and it feels a little dry right there, so I better get that wet. Right in here it feels dry, so I'm putting some clean water in here. I've got a bigger ring of red than I did previously, but this whole sky is wet. I just want to emphasize that this is wet. It's staying wet because I'm working quickly. Working quickly is very important. Now I can go to my blues, and I will come up around my sun in almost a bullseye fashion. Okay, so I'm leaving a little bit of that. And what you might find is, it looks like rings around my sun. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. We can soften that in just a second. But again, I'm aiming for a nice sort of wet sky into which I can paint some of these things. Some of these trees in the background stuff. So I want to make sure all of this has got some wet paint on it. So what do you do if it starts to dry around the sun? You get it wet. Blot your brush and just start working your way around until you get to the wet. Work your way out from yellow to blue, yellow to red to blue, I should say. And now it's all wet and it's softened a lot more. So now I've got a nice wet sky. I can come in, and if the sun is setting, if I am getting kind of that sort of glow around the sun, I can come in and probably use a little bit more of the burnt sienna in my mixture. So I'm gonna use a little more burnt sienna, a little less of the Paynes gray this time. Or maybe just warm colors. So in other words, if I take my Paynes gray and I warm it up with some of the burnt sienna, then all my colors in my trees will look a little warmer. Let's take this one right to the top. What the heck? Right? We'll try something different. Take it right to the top. I think sometimes half the fun of watercolor is just asking yourself, what if we do this? And just play. Do you give yourself permission to play in your watercolor? I think you should. It's always fun. Okay, so if I take some of my burnt sienna, warm up my Paynes gray, so it's a little more brown perhaps, I can put in a little bit more of that. But it's the very bottom where the snow is. If I really want that snow to look like it's really brilliant, having the contrast of something dark behind it will really emphasize that. Now you could actually leave this painting the way it is. You know, if that's all you want to do, that's fine, except it's going to look a little weird with your lines down here. So we do need to put in some lines. So those have to come in. Got a little carried away there, so we'll just come in and fix that. Just picking a couple places to go a little bit darker, just so I have variation. So I got a variation of color, I've got a variation in height and value. Okay, so now we have to just get this dry before we can go on to the next step. All right, let's give this a dry. And I'm going to tell you one thing. Do not try to take off your sticker until it is completely dry. But I want it dry enough that I can take those off. We did get it pretty wet, so it's going to take a minute. And you can see this palette is a little bit warmer, or a little bit cooler, and this one's a little bit warmer. Just to give a different effect. I could have actually changed up the snow there a little bit. I could have put in some of those warm sunny colors as well, or sunset colors, I suppose. If you try that, give me a let me know how it works out for you. I wouldn't go too crazy, but I mean the predominant snow color is still going to pick up more of the sky above, but it's going to be kissed with some of that sunset color as well. Okay, so I'm going to take off my sticker. As you can see, they come off very easy if they've been warmed up like that. And I have kind of a mid-afternoon sun, and I have a sunsetty kind of glow on this one. So I bet you can guess where we're going after this. So I'm going to take a maybe my smaller round. By the way, these are not any special brushes. They're just economical brushes. They're synthetic. We don't need to blow the bank. The one thing I want to talk about here for a second is where the trees go through the sun, because it's very you know, very important that you don't go through with just a really dark line. So I'm going to start with thinned down burnt sienna. Thin down burnt sienna. And I want it thin because I don't want what goes through the sun to look like it's really dense, right? The sun is, you know, you've all looked into the sun and you see that the tree almost looks skinny when you see the sun blasting through a tree. So the tree itself gets really skinny. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to zoom in a little bit on this just so you can see this. I can't zoom in with my hairdryer. Let's try it this way. Okay. Come into focus, you. Okay, that looks... It's sometimes it's tricky the camera has trouble when you put paintings out of focus. It works to try and focus. It's kind of hilarious, but it tries to focus on things that you've deliberately made blurry. Is it too late to show us how you would do that? I'm presuming you mean the colors in the snow. I might be able to do a really quickie demo. We'll see. I have to be somewhere today, so I don't have a lot of time, but I'll do what I can. So I'm going to put a tree through the sun with very thin color. All right, this is important. So you're going to have some Paynes gray ready and your burnt sienna. So see how diluted that is? All right, I'm going to take the Paynes gray, and that's still wet, and I'm going to touch it right down here, and I'm going to touch it up here. So don't come right to the sun, but you can come close to it. And that looks like the sun is sort of going through the tree, or the tree is going through the middle of the sun. Let's see. Let's try another one. Let's do one right here. Nice and wet, and then take a little bit of extra color and put it in the top and the bottom. Whoops, let's go a little darker. Now, those are the ones that I would say be the most careful with. Beyond this part here, you can be very carefree about all your trees and things that you put in. So, for example, you've got some shadows here, which means you need to put a tree in front. How about here? We need to put a tree in front there, and a fatter one here by the look of it. Okay, so you put in your other trees just like normal, and let's put in some others that might be a little further behind, a little further away, so we don't see the shadows from them. Maybe they're on the other side of the hill, that type of thing. That could be a little darker. Put the fat trees darker. This guy's getting fatter by the minute, which is fine. You notice how I'm deliberately not making my trees poker straight? That's the one thing that's really going to kind of spoil the effect, is if you make things look too too perfect, too telephone pole like. Let them wobble a little bit. If you want to put a few branches out as well, feel free. And if you live in an area where you don't have a lot of snow like this, if you ever visit Canada in the winter, get outside, walk through the snow. It is, it's a one-of-a-kind experience, really. You have the quiet of the snow. There's something about the snow on the ground, a fresh snowfall, and it makes everything extra quiet. That's my favorite, is, you know, when the world gets very quiet all of a sudden. You really feel like you're away from it all. And you don't have to be that far away from it all. You just have to be in the woods. All right, so we have our distance. We've got this, and that looks like it's radiating very nice. So I'm going to take my color. I want to make sure it's not too watery here. I'm going to make sure I get my rich color here. And if you have trouble getting your color rich, here's what I suggest. Before you start your painting session, about 10 minutes before or something, add a generous dollop of water into each of your wells so that you soften up the paint. And then it'll be creamier, more like it is straight out of the tube. All right, so this one doesn't connect to anything over here, so I'm gonna put a tree right here. Now this tree is closer to us, so we're not going to get quite the same effect of the sun sort of going, like the tree going right through the middle of the tree. It's not going to be quite the same. Let's bring this down a little bit more. It's funny how you bottom of the tree determines how close it is to you. Well, let's zoom out a bit. Now that you've seen that sun close up, I can show you the overall effect of everything else. And I can take and let's do a small tree here. My hand's not very steady. Let's try that again. I always find it easier to make a straight line when I slide my whole hand, lock my brush and pull my arm rather than my wrist. Oh, and I was going to put a fat tree here, so let's get some good color here. Where the heck is that green coming from? I have a feeling I went into quinacridone gold instead of permanent rose or burnt sienna. It shouldn't be green, it should be brown. That's a lot better. Okay, here comes the fat tree. Now I don't like that these are all kind of all even, so I'm going to bring this one down, right down to the snow here. So they're not all the same, sort of all lined up in a row kind of thing. There we go. This one has two shadows, so we can't have that. Let's have one back here. If you see something that doesn't make sense, that you know that you've got to add something in. Like if you've got if you created a shadow, now this could be from the ones in the back, you know, because they do kind of continue in a line here, because those can be from the ones at the back. But if you get some strange shadow there that doesn't make any sense, you might have to do something about that. All right, let's put one here. And I think that's probably enough trees. Okay, so there's your effect. It looks quite convincing. The one thing about snow I'm going to mention is that it's all connected. Like all those shadows, they get connected. They're not added on. So if you think, oh, I want to add a tree in here, then I'll just add the shadow on, it's not going to look right. If I try to add one of these in now, it's going to look wrong to you. You'll know it right away. It'll look like, oh, what's that blue thing that fell in the snow? It won't look like part of the shadow, so very important. Where do you get all the envelopes for mailing cards? Well, I actually had a lot given to me, but I have purchased them. You can buy them at printers. Printers will order them for you. Any place that does printing. Maybe you'll love one of these cards and want to have it printed if you didn't want to hand paint them all. But if you go into your local drugstore and they have the card display there, if you happen to go in on the day that the lady who fills the things is there, explain to them that you're doing cards. Sometimes they'll hand you some. I've actually had some handed to me that way. That's no guarantee. Do not go and say, Shelley said, but you know, you could get lucky. If you're nice to the person, you know, you might get some. Ask friends to save your cards, save envelopes, that type of thing. But yeah, you can order them from most any place that does printing. You can order some, and I'm pretty sure you can get them at office supply stores too. So I'm going to go over to the second one here. I'm going to start with my diluted burnt sienna. Right, I'm going to put a tree through the sun, but remember I have to put it darker at the bottom. So while it's wet, I'm putting in a little bit of that Paynes gray, and I'm just kind of stopping where the glow around the sun is, and that kind of melts together. As long as your burnt sienna, that, you know, this is pretty watery over here. You can see this is kind of a watery puddle. As long as that's there, I should be able to create the effect. Right? Make sure this is wet enough that I can put in my Paynes gray and get that feeling that the sun is glowing through those trees. So the trees are a little bit illuminated. Oh, I did it again. I went into the quinacridone gold, which turns my Paynes gray quite green. Going into the wrong color, that's not a good thing. All right, so burnt sienna is what we want. Burnt sienna and Paynes gray. So let's create some of our trees here. I want to make sure they're not lined up perfectly the same, because that looks a little odd. And we'll do a couple more over here. Oh, that's a wobbly tree. Let's do a fatter one right here. All right, so I've got some trees along there. If you just wanted to leave that, that's fine. Let's go adding in some more though. So I'm going to put some in behind here, just lots of different shapes and angles and crisscross. Make sure your trees crisscross. They don't grow straight like telephone poles. So make sure you put some variety in. Oop, I got a stripe thing going on there. Let's break that up. Break it up. Leaving a little gap in the trees there just because it's interesting to leave a little gap somewhere. Make those a little darker there. So if you want to make your cards easy to do, don't give yourself so much sky that you can't run the trees off the top, because otherwise you have to paint the tops of the trees, which would be easy enough to do, I suppose, if you had, like if you put those first layers in where we're putting it wet on wet, you could do that at the tops of the trees, and that would give you sort of the illusion that there's all those little fine branches and things like that. So now it's time to add in some more tree trunks. We're going to start coming forward from now. We got the distance done. Now we're going to do the midground, and then we will work our way to the foreground. Don't forget to make your trees different. Like wobble them a little bit, just make them more natural looking. I'm gonna make this guy fat. There's gonna be a fat tree right here. And I'm trying, the more forward I come, the more sort of solid I want to make my paint. I don't want see-through trees. Now, because there's so much shadow down here, we don't even really need to think too much about where we want to place each of the trees. We can pretty much put them anywhere we want. So let's see. But if you have those sort of diagonal lines, you have to have a tree in order for those to make some sense. It will really not make any sense if you don't have a tree where there's some shadows. I'm going to bring this down a little bit more. So just because a tree is fat doesn't mean it's the one in front. It could be just an older tree that's a little further behind. This could be a sapling in front, or a younger tree. So they can all be a little bit different. And I don't know, I think I just kind of want to leave it simple like that. Kind of like that. Maybe one more right here. Okay, so there are my two sort of forest winter scenes there, and my birch tree. So That was 3 paintings in an hour and a half. So half an hour each. That's what we averaged there. Not bad. Not bad for little paintings. And looks like I do not have time. I'm sorry, I don't have time for demonstrating what changing the snow color to sunset colors is. But I can promise you that if you change that to some of those sunset colors, it could be very beautiful. That's the one thing, you know, as long as the values are correct, the actual color that you use is really less significant. Truly the value color, like how dark or light something is more important. And the correct shapes, of course. So let's zoom out. We'll take off some of the tape. I won't take off all of the tape because I've still got another square there. But let's take off some of the tape because it always looks so much better with the tape off. So I'm going to take some of this tape off. Let's leave this last square here. Already looking cleaner, as you can see. And we'll go this way. The one on the left here I can take off, and I can't remember if I dried that or not. I don't think I did, so better be careful what I'm touching. So I hope you have fun painting your birch trees and your other trees. There's our birch tree again, with the sun coming this way. We have everything lit from the left-hand side. Here we're looking into the sun, and we've got one that's more of a sunset, that's more midday. And yeah, so have a little bit of fun with that. Let me know how it works out. You can always share your picture on my Facebook page too. I always like the opportunity to see what you're working on as well. So have fun, and we'll see you again next week. Take care, and thank you again for all of those super thanks. I appreciate that. Bye for now.